Hi everybody, welcome to Abu Dhabi International Book Fair. My name's Kira Jean. I'm moderating this session today. I'm really looking forward to it and thank you all for coming. For those of you walking by, you can come and join us, come and say hello. We're going to spend the next 45 minutes or so talking about the books that you don't read, audiobooks. So whether it's a fiction favorite you've got playing in the background while you're making your lazy Sunday morning coffee, or it's a non-fiction book that you're listening to in the car on the way to work or to pick the kids up for school, or if it's a bedtime story for children or adults that you're listening to kind of shake off the day and have a good restful sleep. No matter what it is, I'm joined by two experts who are going to share with us what it's really like behind the scenes. So what it's like as an author, but also as a producer and a distributor of audiobooks. So I'm joined by Andy Stanton, who's a children's book writer and author, most famous for his children's book series called Mr. Gum, and Tarek Abu Alam, who is the founder and managing director of Glint Consulting and the chairman of Iqrali, which is an Arabic audiobook platform sharing Arabic content and making that easy for everyone to get access to. So thank you so much for joining me today. It's amazing to have you guys here.
Thanks for having us.
Andy, I wanted to start with you as an author of audiobooks. I run a tiny but mighty publishing house here, and we work with authors a lot in producing audiobook versions of the books that they've written. Not all authors write their books thinking about turning it into an audiobook and what that might look like, but you narrated your own series. And so what was that process like, and did you from the beginning know that you were always going to make it into audiobooks?
Okay, well firstly I'd just like to go back a step and say that when you introduced, you said you have two experts here. No, you don't. You have one expert and an idiot. So authors don't know anything. Authors are just mad people who go around with their heads in the cloud thinking about their own little world. Then we're allowed to come to book festivals and book fairs and pretend we know stuff, but we only ever pretend. I write very silly books, very surreal books for children, called the Mr. Gum series, and I try to do, in a very silly way, kind of James Joyce for 8-year-olds. I play with language, I play with silly ideas. I like very onomatopoeic sounds. My books are full of bizarre, outspoken characters. They're full of very cartoonish ideas, very abstract ideas, very silly visual ideas, and they're very performative. There is no requirement as an author to be good at speaking in public or to be good at performing. It helps because the publishing industry has been for maybe 30 years plus, is all about being able to go out on the road and talk at events and talk about your books and have the public interact with your books. So it's very helpful if you can, but a lot of authors aren't as noisy as me. They want to just write. They don't want to come and be an idiot in public. I don't mind being an idiot in public. And again, when it comes to performance, I have some crossover from my background. I didn't write my books with an eye to performing them, but once they are on the page, it was the natural fit, because I've spent a lifetime doing silly voices and just being a very silly person, and so it was a very natural fit. I love that I got to do my books, but as I say, there is no necessary crossover between what an author does on the page and what an audiobook is. I'm very happy to have done my books, though.
And just on that, when you were writing the books, did you have a sense of what all your characters sounded like? And is it the same, or did they evolve over time?
That's a really good question. Yes, I had a good sense of what most of my characters sounded like. And most of them are just stolen from other TV shows that I like and comedy shows. Or they're just a mishmash of ideas. I also write lots of songs in my books, and I always know the tune for the songs. When it came to narrating the audiobooks, I don't think any of my characters changed from how I heard them in my head. But because I write children's books, my books are often read out by parents to their children as well. And I always hear parents telling me that they do the voices in different ways or similar ways, or they say, oh, I always did this character this way, and then I heard your audiobooks and I got it wrong. And I know, you didn't get it wrong. You got it absolutely right. If you made a character out of my books, I'm not there to dictate. When I'm making audiobooks, I've made choices about how they are, but I love the idea that for a reader, an adult or a child, they can still go and make those characters fresh in their own ways. There's no, it's just like, a movie will look different from a character in a book, and then fans will make their own fiction and remix and reinterpret characters again. I'm not there to have the final word. The books ultimately live in people's heads. Even if they've heard me doing them, they're free to go and change things again. I like that. I like that people will add to my work or interpret my work differently.
And Tarek, for you, I know your background is not in the publishing industry per se. You have a consulting background, you work with startups, and Iqrali is part of that. But I mean, we have an author here who has written, narrated, performed all his books. But with your platform, you work more directly with publishers rather than authors. And so, why is that? And what benefit does that provide publishers?
So thank you first for inviting me. Well, it's mainly because I think, or I believe, or we believe that audiobooks are not the typical evolution of print books. Now, ebooks could be a typical evolution or a technological advancement of print books, but not audiobooks. Audiobooks are really different, and as Andy was saying, I mean, when you start producing the print book into an audio format or any sort of other media format, then you really separate it from the original print and from the original voice that everyone hears in his mind. When you acquire the knowledge through your ears, it's very different from acquiring it through your eyes and hearing your own voice by yourself. So that's why we believe that what we're doing is we take a creative work that's intended for a certain mood, for a certain experience, for a certain habit, and we create another form of it. So it's not an evolution of normal books. And that's why we also believe that we're not a publisher. We're not an online publisher, and the only difference is that we work online versus the normal publishers. No, we see these as two different yet complementary industries. So that's why we deal mainly, or I would say only, with publishers, not with authors, because a big deal of the publisher's work is to manage the creativity that comes out from the author and transform it into a marketing and a product that goes to the market. And we cannot do this. It needs a publisher talent to do this. But what we can do is to take this book, produce it in a certain way, and then sell to a different category of customers or of consumers this audiobook that wouldn't necessarily read the book, but would love to listen to it. I mean, if you want me to go very quickly through the differences in the habits between the print book and the audiobook, you cannot read a book while driving. While you listen to a book while driving, so you acquire the knowledge while driving. You cannot read a book in a noisy place, but you can put your earphones and create your own environment to listen to a book. You take the decision to buy a book because you heard it's good, because you like it, because Andy is the author, so you liked his books before that, so you buy another book from him, but then maybe it turns out not what you expected, but you took the decision, you bought it. Now in audiobooks, you subscribe, and then you have a library that's full of thousands of books, and you have the freedom to listen to first chapter, first few minutes, and then decide, no, this is not what I expected. Throw it. I did not lose money. I still have another 1,000 books to listen to. So to me, it's totally different industry because of this. E-books are the normal evolution of print books. Audiobooks, no, totally different animal.
So as a different industry, and hearing what you're saying, it's almost like there's a different reader too, or listener in this case. So what the audiobook industry does is allows an author or a publisher to be able to reach more people than they potentially would. So, for an author, Andy, and your experience with audiobooks, is there a difference between those who will buy the print book and read that? Are you reaching more people, different people, or is it the same?
Well, unfortunately, I don't get all the information on the names and addresses. I don't know who's reading my books particularly. I can tell you what having talked to Tariq about this and from my own thoughts about the overlap between traditional books and audiobooks, I absolutely agree with Tariq that these are a different animal from books on the page. I agree that they reach a new audience, people who might be reluctant to read or don't have the time to read or whatever reason, which I'm sure we'll talk about. But I also think there's a huge overlap between readers and listening readers. And I'm one of them. All authors are readers first. Every author. You don't become an author if you don't read. That's the first rule of writing, is read. I love audiobooks as a consumer and as a reader. I listen to audiobooks that I've read on the page. I listen to audiobooks that I haven't read, but I very, very often return to favorite books and either purchase them or subscribe to them, get them in some way, and listen to books as a different sort of communion to examine the text in another media. It doesn't take away from reading to me. It's a sort of sideshow, it's an augmentation. But I would think from my own reading habits and what I know about friends of mine who are readers, writers, and audiobook listeners, there is a huge overlap. I think you shouldn't forget that, Tariq. There's a huge overlap between readers and book listeners. But I absolutely think it widens the audience to people who also don't read, and it brings them books, which is fantastic. I just see this as a real win-win-win situation.
And I know for us as a publisher, we, when we're looking at working with a brand new author, how much they read and what they read is really important, and that's something that we actually consider. And we know that a writer who is well read and reads a lot is going to be a much better writer than someone that doesn't. So when it comes to audiobooks, does a narrator have to listen to audiobooks as an author who's narrating their book for the very first time? If they've never listened to an audiobook, they don't do that. Is that going to have an impact on how well they do it?
They have to know what they're doing. Same as any, I think just the same as any job. You have to know what's out there so that you know where you fit in and you know the rules. If you want to break the rules, you know what you're breaking. If you want to conform to the rules, you know that you're doing a very good job conforming to the rules. I think, narrators of e-books tend to be either actors who know how to interpret scripts and texts, or occasionally the author who hopefully knows how to interpret their own text. But in either case, we're talking about people who are in love with ideas and language, I think, and you have to be, and with performing. You have to be in love with performing, with language, and communication and sensitivity to what's on the page. Would you agree with that, Tariq?
Yeah, definitely, yeah.
It'd be terrible if you said no, though, wouldn't it? No, I wouldn't agree with that.
No, don't worry.
But with your platform, Iqrali, Tariq, I mean, Are you having, Arabic narrators? Is most of the content narrated by other people when it comes to audiobooks, or is it the authors themselves who are narrating it and then the publishers producing that?
No, it's mainly the narrators, not the authors. It's mainly narrators, and it's like a new generation of young and talented, they start with like voiceover for any different reason, and then they find that book narration is something that is nice, and then they start also, and this is also something different in this industry, is that you find people, or lots of people, go to the book not only because of the author, but also because of the narrator. So lots of time they follow the narrators, and our narrators end up having their own YouTube pages and followers and create their own project. And people tend to take what they say. I mean, so if I hear you, if I listen to you reading a book, and I believe what you're saying, I tend more to also believe what you're saying in other books, even if the content is not, but the voice itself, you create loyalty to the voice.
Yeah, oh, definitely. I'm a big Stephen King fan, and there's a fantastic American reader called Grover Gardner, who narrates some Stephen King books. And then recently I was talking to a friend of mine who recommended as the best audiobook he's ever heard a history of the Third Reich. And I thought, that sounds amazing. And I went and listened to that, and it's the same reader. And I feel like I'm in very good hands, but it's just such a different subject. But I'm being read to by somebody I trust, somebody I believe, somebody I invest in. But I was going to ask you as well, or talk about, sorry if you don't mind me making up questions of my own here. For me, reading an actual book is still the ultimate communion between an author and their audience. Because when you read, you can stop on any word and gaze into the distance and meditate on that word or on that idea, come back and read. And I know you can rewind audiobooks, yeah, but you can't rewind at the speed you rewind or pause when you're reading a book. That's the ultimate interface. And that's what reading is. Now, that's not to put down audiobooks. You have different features, and one of the main different features is you have a communion with the voice, definitely. You have somebody reading to you. You have a relationship. You're being held by someone. You're being, have your hand held as you walk through the park, right? Do you add any other production to your audiobooks that give any other added features, such as you use music, sound effects? Because
yeah, that's a very controversial issue, actually. Until now, frankly, we don't have an answer. And even when I look internationally, frankly, I don't see a clear answer for this. Some people, when you put, of course, like music, background, or some sound effects or something, it really helps if it's done correctly. It really helps with the production and helps people to enjoy more the book. Now, the problem is that many people who specifically are readers don't want any interruption. They want, okay, I can live with hearing a voice, but don't push me to believe that I should be excited very much here. No, that's okay here. Let me decide the tone of the book. So some people would like this, some people wouldn't like it. It's not clear yet. It really depends on the consumer.
Because it's so interesting, because you can offer those things on an audiobook, and then you start saying, well, where does the book stop and a dramatization or a production begin? And I wonder, it's just struck me now, would you ever consider putting out two versions of a book where you put the flat reading and then you put something a little bit more dressed up for the readers who want that? So you could have like the sports game with commentary and without.
That would be great if you can have multiple dialects, multiple accents, with background, without background, but it costs a lot.
Oh, I know, it costs a lot.
So when AI comes, we can talk about this. They can create too many versions, as much as you like. You can, you know better than anyone. And by the way, you know very well. So once this technological advancement happen one day, they're not there yet, then you can really personalize everything. You can hear this book with the voice of Tarek, and the other character is Andy, and the background is I don't know what, and it's a totally different thing. But for now, it's a production cost. So you have to decide and take a decision, and that's it.
And I guess that goes back to what you were saying earlier about the reader's connection with your work and their ability to kind of create those characters in their mind and what they sound like and what they look like and who they are. And with audiobooks, that, I guess in some ways, being a little bit of a limitation in terms of how much the reader can create that interaction and the connection and have that of their own making. So with audiobooks, I mean, I'm curious to hear from you. Maybe Tarek, we'll start with you. Like, what do you feel are the main benefits of publishers and authors really kind of investing in audiobooks? And what do you think are some of the limitations that audiobooks still have today?
Yeah, that's a very good question. Thank you. Now, for the benefits for publishers, it's the simple fact that publishers know how many books were sold. And maybe with some research, they also know how did people like the book after buying it. But they don't really exactly know who read the book till the end, who finished what. Now, when you have an app, every click on the app is recorded. So the data is there. We can tell the publishers how many persons were attracted to the book and started listening to it, how many persons finished the book, how many persons left it after 10 minutes. They didn't feel that this is what they're looking for. We can tell them also that which season would be better, at least for the audiobook. Of course, it's different from the print book, but I mean, what would be the best time to, and who really listens to these books? I mean, what are they male, female, young, adults, whatever? All this data, the digital platforms at large have. And this is very useful because you can give back this data, and I'm sure it helps the publishers on this. Now, one of the limitations of the audiobook industry, I mean, I see the audiobook is more part of, or is closer to the infotainment group or industry. So they're closer to summaries, closer to podcasts than to print books and publishing. So the competition coming, for example, from summaries. Lots of people now don't want to listen to the whole book, especially if we go away from the fiction and from stories. If it's non-fiction, which is huge, then you really don't care about the background and all this. You really want the information. How to make money in I don't know what. Okay, well, how to be a good investor. You really want 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So this is one problem of the industry, is that, in my opinion, at least in our region, the industry is not mature yet to the extent that people see all the benefits of audiobooks and start passing to podcasts and summaries. So the fear here is, or the concern is, that people jump from audiobooks to summaries and podcasts quicker than they should.
And from an author kind of perspective, do you see particular benefits or limitations to sharing and your work in those kind of ways?
You mean, how do you mean sharing? Sorry.
So publishing your work, getting your stories out there in an audiobook format, do you see any particular benefit to doing that? I'm thinking more along the lines of, if there's somebody here today who's wanting to self-publish and they're a writer and they've written their book, self-published their book, do you think there's value in them then looking to do it in an audiobook format?
Yeah, I absolutely. I don't see any of this as cannibalizing anything else. I think there's a market for books, there's a market for audiobooks, and there's crossover in that market, but they also, both of those things together are bigger than than just one market alone. And it only expands books. It's the same as, for me, when the Kindle came out, which to me always augmented my love of books. It's a new tool to experience books. There are lots of books I wouldn't read on a Kindle because I need to make notes in the margin, or I need to have 5 books open at once if I'm doing research or comparing something, and that's not what a Kindle offers, or another e-reader. But it's there to augment my reading options and capabilities and experience. And if I'm going on holiday, I now have 1,000 books in my Kindle. I don't have 7 books like this that are taking up most of my suitcase. Audiobooks are there not to replace books, but to help me think about books from a different perspective, and at times they help me read more. Even if I'm not reading. The experience is different, but very, very close if I pay attention. I examine text very carefully with my ears. Maybe not to the degree with my eyes, but if I was on a flight yesterday for 6.5 hours, and I was listening to Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte. Fantastic, because I was too tired to read. Or if I'm doing the dishes, or if I'm in the bath, or well, you can read in the bath, but then you know what happens. The book ends up looking like a souffle. And to me, all of this stuff is only bringing people to texts more and more and more. And if it catches people who weren't reading it in other ways, fantastic. As a anyone who wants to self-publish, absolutely self-publish in text. And if you can make the production and you have the resources to do that, self-publish as an audiobook as well. It's only more availability and ways for an audience, from my point of view.
And I think hearing you say that, a reader is always going to read. So somebody who loves books, loves stories, is going to go to whatever platform works for them.
I think so. And a non-reader may start reading through audiobooks. And that makes me really happy. And I love it when people who don't read start reading. I had a school friend who, at the age of 40, said to me, "Do you know what, Andy? I never read. I want to start reading again. Tell me where to start." I said, "Let me tell you where to start." Makes me so happy. If people need to come to books firstly through audiobooks, and then they move into actually wanting the experience of eye on text and brain on text, even better. Catch some more people.
I've met quite a few readers who are dyslexic and have hated reading, and it's been such a struggle and so stressful for them, but through audiobooks have fallen in love with stories and being able to hear the stories that their friends at school would talk about that they really struggled to read during that time. So I think in terms of bringing people to stories and that love of reading, it's something that can really support that. And do you see that through your platform? Do you see people kind of coming to that for that enjoyment, or do you find that it's more kind of information-based, so your non-fiction books are kind of the bestsellers and what people go to, or is there a space for fiction and stories like that?
No, I think we have enough, or not enough, but we have a good percentage of our books, or at least in our library, that's fiction book and stories and stuff like this. So we have enough of that, and people are enjoying it. And but what they really lack is the non-fiction books and the self-development books and the translated books, and there is a certain, I would say, hunger for these types of books that the audiobook listeners in the Arab world would love to have, and we feel that this genre is really needed. So the more of this, the better. But for the stories and for all that fiction-based type, they're happy with it, they love it, but there is also a lot of it, so there is no shortage in this. And if I may comment on this, and this may also lead us to something that maybe we were discussing before the panel, which is, again, back to our region here, or to the Arab audiobooks industry. Now, as Andy was saying, the audiobooks to the author at the end is a way to increase their customer base, correct? With users who maybe yes, they would buy the book and read it, but maybe also not, or maybe would like to try it, or whatever. Now, one of the bad practices that happened in this region that we personally, as a company, did not believe in and never did, and I think we've been proven to be correct, is that now the audiobooks industry is part of the startup technical industry that's happening in all the world. And this industry has a huge influx of money and rounds and all that stuff. So one of the easiest things to be done for the startups, especially for the international big players, is to go to a certain region or industry or small market and ask for exclusivity. Give me your books exclusively, I'll produce them, I'll put it only on my platform, and how much money do you want? I'll give them to you. We never thought that this is good for the industry, but I'm not that much of an expert in this industry, but I mean, there are experts in this industry, Sir Ahmed Shuruq, they also shared the same vision, so this made us feel, no, we're right, let's lose some good books, but we think this is on the longer term is not good. Now, 3 or 4 years down the road, it ended up for some publishers with the following, that they sold the rights of their books for 5 or 6 or 7 years for some players who either do not exist anymore, but nobody can benefit from the book or even produce it, because these were local regional startups that raised a lot of money, and then the market went down, and then they just, but they still have the rights, and they're looking for someone to buy these rights. We already bought some of them and produced them. And others, like very big players who also come to the region, and for international market and all that, they kind of, I'm not saying lose interest in the region, but just pause their efforts in the region, which means that also your books are not going to be produced or listened to in a growing customer base. So I think if publishers look at this industry as an industry to help them reach more customer base, not to make money, at least at this stage, because I mean the amount of money that's made on all the digital platforms at this stage in our region is really minimal for the publishers. This would be better. So I think this is also one of the lessons learned that we're talking about.
Absolutely. And on lessons learned, I mean, are there any tips that you would give to a narrator and an author that you wish you'd known before you went into producing your audiobooks?
It's very hard work. As soon as you start trying to narrate a book, you can't even, you forget what words are. No, it's just very, very painstaking work. You have to exhibit a sensitivity to the text at all times. It's just very concentrated work. There's all sorts of funny things. Even in your own books, you forget, where you sort of go, oh, that's nice, he said in surprise. Oh, that's nice. So you have to do it again. Oh, that's nice, he said in surprise. You have to read, it's really weird, you have to kind of read ahead to see what's happening, even as you're narrating this sentence. So you have to split yourself up into 2 people, see what's happening there, talking there. And sometimes when you're narrating, you kind of find that you're just going like this now, and I've forgotten what the words mean, but here are the words are very nice. So, no, it's just, again, like anything, you just have to take care to stay connected to the work. It's like painting, doing some very fine paint work. You can't just go...
Yeah, I hear you on that, and I think as a publisher, we always try to stress that it's not an author or a narrator reading that story out loud. It's a work of its own, and it's an A to Z process, and what you would do in publishing a print book, an audio book, is just as much work.
I'll tell you something interesting. Many years ago now, Kate Winslet got in touch with me, and she wanted to narrate my books, the ones I'd already narrated. And I'd only narrated 3 of the 8 books at that point. And Kate Winslet said she loved my books, she loved reading them to her kids, and could she narrate them? And I said, well, I've already narrated. But she wanted to meet for lunch, and she's Kate Winslet, so of course I met for lunch, and I was very nervous. And I spent most of the lunch sweating, and I just looked like a waterfall. And eventually, she persuaded me to let her narrate my books. And I wish I hadn't done it, because it was terrible. Now, Kate Winslet is a brilliant actor. but she's not the best person to narrate my books. And I couldn't star in Titanic. But I can read my books. It doesn't matter what the person does. You don't have to be the author to narrate well. You don't have to be, just so long as you're the right person for the book. And I'm sure Kate Winslet's brilliant at narrating other books as well. But she wasn't a good fit for mine. It's all about the fit. And if I couldn't do my books, I wouldn't do them. But people really like my versions, and I'm really proud of them.
Actually, also as a comment on this, I mean, just a few months ago, we had one of the very important authors. He's not an author; he's a key figure in Egypt, writing the second part of his biographies and stuff regarding certain 10 years of his life as a minister and stuff like this, and so out of courtesy, we sent him a sample of the book with 2 different narrators and told him, I mean, who do you prefer? So he was smart and enough to tell us, no, I don't judge. You judge. You know better what works in this. So you judge on this. You're the professional guys. I mean, so yes, you're right.
But that's, sorry, that was an autobiography. Yeah, but he knew he couldn't narrate it himself.
No, but we didn't ask him.
No,
we
you
asked
didn't
him,
even ask
which
him.
narrator would you like? Which voice do you feel is closer to you? So even this, he said, no, I don't judge.
Yeah.
At the end, you judge, you choose.
But it's so interesting that that even just the fact that you are, a person is not necessarily the best person to narrate their own life as a performance is so interesting, isn't it? He sounds like a smart man.
He was a presidential candidate, so yeah he is a smart man.
And that's it. I think when we're publishing print books, we're always, focusing on what's best for the reader and how you're going to attract them with a nice book cover and what that experience is going to be like for them. And I think when it comes to audiobooks, it is about being able to kind of step back and look at that objectively and know what's in the listener's best interest. And I think what's interesting about your platform is you have access to information about what people are listening to, what they're enjoying, and so you're able to make sure that you're crafting that experience in a way where it's most enjoyable for them.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. All right. So I know we're almost out of time, and I'm sure we have some questions here. Just before we move to questions, I'd love to hear from each of you. What is it that you wish people knew or understood about audiobooks and the experience of making them, selling them, or the industry at large? What do you wish people knew that perhaps they don't know yet?
You mean by people, consumers, users, or industry experts, or because there is something for everyone that I wish they would knew?
If we look at the audience here today, what do you wish you could tell the audience that they could know about audiobooks that perhaps they wouldn't because they're not in the industry?
Readers and listeners. Yeah, readers. I mean, some people, by the way, would love or build the habit of listening while reading also the books. They find it also very immersive and they like it. No, I think just maybe if I'd like people just to try it, to give it a try, and to create the right environment for listening to audiobooks that's a bit, or I would say, that's different. That's really different from the habit that they have for reading books. Because if you try to listen to a book within the same environment and time and the habit that you read a book, you will not like it. You will prefer to but do it while driving, while at the house, while in a place where it's very crowded, but you really would like to have some time for yourself, and you cannot do it other by listening to an audiobook. So give it the right environment and give it a try, and I'm sure they'll really like it.
What would I like people? It's almost not a question for me, because I just like books, and audiobooks are books. They're different from books, but they're books. It's just another way into having more books more of the time in your life, and that is my life. So, like, anything to do with accessing books and accessing text and getting into somebody else's head. And that communion is just like, why wouldn't that be the greatest thing in the world? Use books, use audiobooks. It's fantastic. It's literally nothing to be scared of. It's just another extra fantastic thing we can do now.
I love that. Audiobooks are books, and give them a try. So do we have any questions from the audience here for Tariq or Andy? Yeah, in the back there.
Hello, thank you so much. I wanted to ask Andy, I know Tariq, you said there is a place for audiobooks, and with adults, we find the place while driving, while cooking, sometimes. How about for children? Do you think that, do you have more children listening to audiobooks or?
That's a good question. I think one of the things I hear most as a children's author is that families love listening to these in the car. That's where they love it. They've got a long car trip, 2 hours, 5 hours, 8 hours, whatever, and they put my CDs on or MP3s or whatever, and they'll listen to them. We were saying this earlier, actually. One of the things about kids' books, I think, more than some other genres, is that they will listen to them over and over and over again. I try to make them as entertaining as possible because I don't want the parents to get bored either. And I don't want to get bored. So my audiobooks are actually filled with sound effects, comedic noises, silly voices, little stings of music. But that, in my case, that is to turn the book, which is already a comedy production, into a comedy production, to translate the effects of the book into another medium. But I would say bedtimes for kids, hopefully with the parents there too. Not a replacement for parents reading children books, no. But maybe listening together would be really nice. But definitely car journeys. That's the big one.
Any other question? Yeah, yeah.
You said, Andy, when you wrote Mr. Gum books, you could hear their voices in your head. How come?
Because I hear voices in my head.
Oh my God. Can you give us an example? Can you give us maybe a bit of two of your favourite characters from the books?
Well, because when I write characters, I write in those books especially, I'm writing very big, grotesque, cartoonish characters. So they come with all of my characters come with a very particular speech pattern. And to get that speech pattern, I really have to hear it in my head. So Mr. Gum talks like that. All right, Billy, me old gobbler. And he talks very common. And he goes, you ain't gonna run away from me, are ya? That's Mr. Gum. Whereas Polly, who's my favourite character, she's the heroine. Now, she talks very peculiar. She talks like a cross between a Dickensian street urchin and a Mississippi blues guitarist. So she sort of goes, come on, Frides, we got to stop Mr. Gum before he gets his plan going, blah, blah. I can't even do it now. She talks in a totally made-up way, but it's got this kind of bounce and rhythm, and come on, we can do it, yeah? So I hear those rhythms a lot when I write. And I can't put on music while I'm writing at all. Some authors can, but I think most authors can't because it disrupts the rhythm of how you're writing. And it disrupts even dialogue and non-dialogue. You have to hear the rhythm of the words. Another good thing, actually, another interesting thing about turning books into audio books is absolutely you have to have an ear for rhythm. You have to have an ear for the music of the language. You have to have that when you write it. You have to have that when you perform it. And hopefully the reader or listener experiences it. So yeah, I hear everything I do. I wish I'm a frustrated musician, essentially.
And he says he's not an expert in audiobooks. He gives a lecture right now on how to narrate a book, but he's not an expert in audiobooks.
I think what you said about, so one of my daughters is an avid reader, but I said to her, I've just read an amazing book. It's fiction. She listens to non-fiction. She loves listening to audiobooks, non-fiction, but she hates it if it's fiction. So I thought that was really interesting. Please, what do you think about that?
Yes, definitely. Maybe this is one of the things that we touched on at the beginning when Andy was talking about should we add some production or backgrounds or whatever effects on the book or not, and we said many people don't like this. They like to hear, they're okay with even having a voice coming to them, but not to the extent to pushing their feelings. So I think your daughter is even more sensitive on this, that she doesn't even want to hear a certain voice narrating the fiction. She wants to read it and hear her own voice, like Andy.
Just elaborating on that, there are some publishers, or they use actors or famous names for narrating their audiobooks. Do you think that audiences respond better to the author of the book reading their own book, or do they prefer a well-known name or someone with more acting skills to narrate the books?
Frankly, my opinion, but this is now not a very professional opinion because we have other people in the company that are responsible for production and stuff like this. But my personal opinion is that in the Arab world especially, actors, we Arabs are a bit more sensitive, and when it comes to so we're more attached to the actors. We see them in a certain way. So maybe it would, if I hear, for example, Adil Imam reading a serious book, even if he reads it very well, he's a comedian to me. I will never take the... So no, I don't think this is a very good idea. It helps, of course, with the selling the book, with the marketing, that, hey, by the way, the narrator of this book is a famous person. But the narrators themselves, we receive every day, I would say maybe more than 10 or 12 requests for narration from all the world, because there are Arabs all the world. And just today we were discussing, with someone, because and so there is an industry that's growing of narrators of audiobooks in the Arab world that deserves to take the lead on this. And as I was just saying, the ones who succeed from them, they get a very good rating, and rating, by the way, is one of the things that we also help the publishers with. And once they are good in a certain genre, they can continue with this, and people will follow them and will listen to the book because the narrator is X or Y.
But sorry, can I just say once more, there's no right answer except, does the person fit the book? Is the person good at reading the book? I think listeners want to feel that first and foremost.
So there are two good answers, mine and Andy.
I think mine's kind of the same as yours.
I think we have time for one more question. Are there any? Yeah, over here.
Right, Tarek.
Well, my question is for Mr. Tariq, because I was thinking about the acting. Sorry. My question is for Mr. Tariq, because I was thinking of the actor thing. I think the Arab don't like the actor overacting the reading, because I feel that there is some fight back on things that we don't like to change. So for me, I read too much, but I can't imagine audiobooks that, except that it will make me fall asleep. And then I don't want to hear an actor because he will act too much. So it's for me a war between, and it's you have to always fight for real books. And then, so I wanted to know, in your experience, is it really working with the Arabic community? Are they not, is it spreading? I know maybe you've touched on that in the beginning of the session. I wasn't here. Is it really working? Because I want to know, is it treated as a replacement for, because I see the way it's promoted as a replacement for books when you don't have time to read. Because if you are just sitting, you will just read. Otherwise, if you are busy or you are driving, you will listen to audiobooks. So it's just a replacement, a temporary replacement for real books. How do you promote it in another words? Like, how is it a different genre by itself in the Arabic community itself? Like, how is that different?
Yeah, so again, definitely it's not a replacement because it's not either audiobooks or print books. It's not a replacement, it just fits, it's another type of habit and another type of experience that you can either enjoy both print books and audiobooks or enjoy one of them only and don't enjoy the other. So it's not a replacement, it's a different thing. Now, Iqra'li, we have, and we're one of many players because we have the players of the Arabic audiobooks, few of them, but we still also have the YouTube that's full of Arabic audiobooks, trials and channels and stuff like this, and we have lots of content. So even for Iqra'li with its size, we have almost 1 million downloads every year from Arabs, all from 150 countries. That are consuming hundreds of millions of minutes. And remember that also because we're a premium service, people pay to subscribe, so this is also a barrier. When we open our library for some free books or something like this, it's a huge inflow of users who would like to listen to the books. So I think, yeah, definitely the need is there. People love the idea. It is successful within the younger generation, that's, I think, for sure. And it's not a replacement.
Sorry, one more question. You touched on it earlier, dyslexia, but I wonder how much use audiobooks are for second language learners. So if you come to English as a second language, often you can speak and you understand the spoken a lot more than written, and certainly the same with Arabic. So are you finding, can you do any research into that?
Yeah, actually...
Tariq's got all the numbers. He can do research into anything.
No, yeah, and, but unfortunately, I mean, the Arab language for lots of Arabs is a second language. When it comes to being a language of, when they read books, lots of Arabs, when they read books, they read in English. When they think in their mind, they think in English, especially the new, I'm talking about the new generations, of course, mostly, and the westernization that's happening and all that stuff. So one of the reasons why children books in Arabic are doing well on our platform, we believe at least, is not because the Arab children want it, but because their parents all over the world want them to listen to Arabic books. Even if these books don't have something that's not there in the English books, I mean, even the stories, but they want them to listen to Arabic. If they don't read Arabic, okay, but at least listen to Arabic so that you stay attached to the culture. So yes, I mean.
Were you gonna? I can see. Yeah, we're out of time. I thought you might have another question then, no? Okay, all right. Well, thank you everyone for joining us. Before we wrap up, I just have some thank yous here. First to the Arabic Language Center and the AV team and the volunteers who are making all of this happen and been taking very good care of us as well. And of course, thank you to Andy and Tariq for joining us here today. And we really appreciate all of you being here as well. So thank you so much. We hope you enjoyed it. And enjoy the Abu Dhabi International Book Fair. Thank you so much.
And we don't have Andy's audiobooks here, but we do have his books over in the signing area there, if anyone wants to buy some Mr. Gum.